I sat down and there was a camera here and a camera here, and we were going to shoot our singles simultaneously.
For 3 decades, Sharon Stone fooled us all. We watched her on screen and thought we knew her. The Ice Queen, the femme fatale, who always seemed in control. But the woman on the red carpet was just a character. The real Sharon Stone was living another life entirely, hidden in plain sight. A life of loss, of betrayal, and of survival against impossible odds. She kept this side of her a secret for years. But now, we finally know the truth about who she really was. And you'd be shocked to hear why she kept it hidden for so long. Sharon Stone's rise to fame. In the 1990s, Sharon Stone was one of the most famous women on the planet. She was everywhere. On magazine covers, on movie posters, and on the minds of millions. For over 3 decades, the public watched her rise and dominate. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Sharon lived a double life, a part of her that was never mentioned in interviews, never captured by the paparazzi, and never hinted at on the red carpet. Sharon Von Stone was born on March 10, 1958, in a small town called Meadville, in northwestern Pennsylvania. Her father, Joseph William Stone II, was a tool and die manufacturer, while her mother, Dorothy Marie, worked as an accountant. She was the second of 4 children, raised in a household that valued hard work and straight talk. Even as a child, it was clear Sharon was different. It wasn't just that she was pretty. It was that her mind worked faster than everyone else's. She was tested and found to have an IQ of 154, a number that places a person in the genius range. She was academically gifted, so much so that at just 15 years old, she won a scholarship to attend Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania to study creative writing and fine arts. But college costs money, even with a scholarship. And in a working-class family, you find a way to pay your own way. For Sharon, that way was pageants. She entered a local competition and won the title of Miss Crawford County. It wasn't a lifelong dream. It was a practical move. Pageants came with prize money and scholarships. They also came with attention. A talent scout saw the face and the poise and suggested she try modeling. That suggestion led her to New York City and a contract with the famous Ford modeling agency. Modeling paid the bills. It gave her a foothold in a city that can swallow you whole if you don't have one. But Sharon had not moved to New York to stand still in front of a camera. She wanted to act. She wanted to use the mind and the creativity she had been developing her whole life. So she started knocking on doors. And for a long time, those doors either stayed closed or opened only a crack. She began landing small parts in films. Her first appearance was in 1980, in Woody Allen's Stardust Memories. It was a tiny role, barely a blip. She was easy to miss, and that became the pattern. She would get cast, but she would be treated as a prop. She was a model trying to act, and Hollywood has a short, cruel way of dismissing people with that label. She was overlooked and was typecast before she even had a type. She worked steadily throughout the 1980s, appearing in films like Irreconcilable Differences and Action Jackson. But steady work is not the same as stardom. Sharon was frustrated. She knew she was smarter than the roles she was being offered, and she knew she had more to give. But the industry only saw the surface. It would take a role that demanded both physical presence and mental steel to change their minds. That role came in 1990. It was a massive, loud science fiction action film directed by Paul Verhoeven called Total Recall. She was cast opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger as his wife, Laurie. But this was no damsel in distress. Laurie was a constructed character, hiding a lethal secret. Sharon played the part with a physicality and a sharp edge that cut through the explosions and special effects. For the first time, audiences didn't just see a beautiful woman on screen. They saw someone who could hold her own against the biggest action star in the world. Total Recall was a massive hit, and suddenly, Hollywood started paying attention. 2 years later, she was cast again in a film that would change everything. Basic Instinct was a thriller designed to shock and provoke. It was dark, it was explicit, and at its center was Sharon Stone, playing a character named Catherine Trammell. Trammell was a former rock star, a brilliant novelist, and a prime suspect in a murder case. She was manipulative, seductive, and utterly unpredictable. She was also, without question, in control of every scene she was in. The film became a phenomenon. It grossed over $350 million worldwide. The famous interrogation scene, where she crosses and uncrosses her legs, became one of the most talked about moments in film history. But that moment, and the film's success, threatened to overshadow the quality of the performance. Almost overnight, she became the woman everyone wanted to talk about. She was on the cover of every magazine. She was the subject of endless debates. She was a movie star. But with that stardom came a trap. Hollywood now had a box for her, and it was labeled femme fatale. She was offered role after role that required her to be mysterious and seductive. She had to fight to prove that her range went further. She proved it in 1995 when she reunited with Martin Scorsese, who had briefly worked with her on an earlier film. For Casino, Scorsese needed an actress who could play a woman named Ginger McKenna. Ginger was a fast-talking, ruthless hustler from the Las Vegas Strip. She was glamorous, yes, but she was also broken, volatile, and desperate. It was a brutal, unflinching role, the kind actresses dream of. Sharon Stone disappeared into it. The performance earned her a Golden Globe for Best Actress and an Academy Award nomination. It silenced any remaining doubt about her talent. By the mid-1990s, she had achieved everything an actress could want. She was one of the highest-paid women in Hollywood, commanding millions per picture. She won an Emmy for a guest role on the television drama The Practice. She was consistently ranked among the most beautiful and influential women in the world. She had fought her way out of a small town, out of the modeling racket, out of typecasting, and had reached the very top of her profession. But behind the gates of her Hollywood home, behind the designer dresses and the flashing cameras, Sharon Stone's life was following a very different script. While she was building a career, she was also living a second life, one she kept hidden from the world. It was a life marked by quiet battles, personal loss, and a secret that she carried alone for more than 3 decades. The losses that shaped Sharon Stone. Sharon Stone's first attempt at marriage came early. In 1984, she married Michael Greenberg, a television producer. She was 26 years old, still fighting for respect in an industry that saw her as a model playing dress-up. The marriage was meant to be a foundation, a stable place in an unstable world. But by 1987, the relationship had fallen apart. The divorce was not finalized until 1990, the same year Total Recall would change her career. As her star rose, so did the attention on her personal life. She became engaged twice in the 1990s, first to producer William J. McDonald and later to director Bob Wagner. Both engagements were called off before they reached the altar. To the tabloids, this was simple gossip. Another glamorous Hollywood star unable to settle down. But the reality was more complicated. Sharon was looking for something real, something lasting, in a world where authenticity is hard to find. And she was carrying a private pain that made the search even more urgent. In 1998, she married again. This time, it was to Phil Bronstein, a respected journalist who was then the editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. It seemed like a solid match. He was not in the film industry. He was a writer and an intellectual. They lived in San Francisco, away from the relentless glare of Los Angeles. 2 years into the marriage, they made a decision that would change everything. They adopted a baby boy, and they named him Roan. Becoming a mother was transformative for Sharon. It was a role she had wanted for years, but the path to motherhood had been paved with heartbreak. Before Roan, and even after him, Sharon endured something she kept largely to herself. Over the course of her adult life, she suffered 9 miscarriages. She has since spoken about these experiences with a candor that is rare. She described the physical pain, the sense of emptiness, and the isolation that comes from a type of grief society often expects women to bear in silence. Miscarriage is common, but it is rarely discussed. For Sharon, each loss was profound. Each pregnancy was a hope, a future, and a life she could already imagine. And each time, that future vanished. The losses took a toll on her body, but perhaps more deeply, they took a toll on her spirit. They also added strain to her relationships, including her marriage. Despite the grief, she did not give up. After her divorce from Phil Bronstein was finalized in 2004, she made a choice that would define the rest of her life. She would become a mother on her own. In 2005, she adopted her second son, Laird von Stone. She was a single woman, adopting a child, in an industry that often punishes women for aging, let alone for stepping outside traditional family structures. She did not care. The next year, in 2006, she adopted her third son, Quinn Kelly Stone. In the span of 2 years, she went from a woman who had suffered repeated pregnancy losses to a single mother of 2. But her family was not complete without Roan. Her first son remained a central part of her life, though his situation was complicated. After the divorce, a long and difficult custody battle began. In 2008, a court awarded primary custody of Roan to Phil Bronstein. For any parent, losing daily custody of a child is a devastating blow. For Sharon, it was another loss added to a list that was already too long. She has spoken about the pain of that arrangement, but also about her commitment to maintaining a relationship with her son, no matter the obstacles. With Laird and Quinn, she built a new life. She raised them as a single mother in a city built for 2-parent families. She balanced school runs with script meetings. She traded red carpet events for parent-teacher conferences. Her career, which had once been the center of her universe, shifted to the background. She still worked, but she chose projects carefully, often prioritizing those that allowed her to stay close to home. The fame that had once been so hard to achieve now seemed less important than being present for her children. She has described her sons as miracles, and she means that literally. After so many miscarriages, after being told by doctors that her chances of having children were slim, she found herself with 3 boys who needed her. They gave her something Hollywood never could. They gave her a reason to keep going that had nothing to do with box office numbers or magazine covers. They grounded her and connected her to a life beyond the bubble of celebrity. But just as she was finding her footing as a mother, something else was coming. This time, it would strip away everything she thought she knew about herself and leave her fighting for her very existence. In 2001, while her career was still at its peak and her family was just beginning to take shape, Sharon Stone suffered a medical emergency that brought her to the edge of death. Sharon's near-death experience. In 2001, Sharon Stone had everything: a career at its peak, a future that stretched out before her, bright and unlimited. But then, without warning, everything stopped. It happened suddenly. She was at home when a searing pain tore through her head. It was unlike anything she had ever felt. She collapsed, and her body stopped working the way it was supposed to. She was taken to a hospital. And there, the unthinkable happened. Doctors looked at her, evaluated her symptoms, and sent her home. They told her she would be fine. They missed what was actually happening inside her skull. For 9 days, Sharon Stone lived with a brain hemorrhage that had not been properly diagnosed. 9 days when her life hung in the balance and no one knew it. The bleeding in her brain continued, and the damage spread. By the time a friend insisted she receive proper medical attention, by the time she was transferred to a specialized hospital, she was on the edge of death. She underwent emergency treatment, but the damage had already been done. The hemorrhage had caused a stroke, and that stroke had stolen things from her that she had spent a lifetime building. The list of what she lost is staggering. She could not read. For 2 years, the simple act of looking at words on a page was beyond her. She could not walk properly. She could not even speak clearly. Her memory was shattered. She had to relearn basic functions, the kind of things most people never think about because they happen automatically. Walking across a room, forming a sentence, recognizing a face. She has described the experience as leaving her body. She felt herself floating away, watching from above as her physical self lay broken. It was a near-death experience, the kind people whisper about but rarely admit. It took 7 years of rehabilitation, 7 years of fighting to regain what had been taken. She was bedridden for months. She needed help with everything. The woman who had commanded movie sets, who had held her own against Arnold Schwarzenegger and Martin Scorsese, could not bathe herself or feed herself. The isolation was profound. Hollywood had no place for her now. Studios looked at her medical history and saw only risk. She was uninsurable, which meant she was unhirable. She went from being one of the most famous women in the world to being invisible, all because her body had failed her. She has spoken about how women in Hollywood are treated during health crises. There is no safety net. There is no compassion. There is only the cold math of the industry. If you cannot work, you are replaced. If you are a risk, you are dropped. She learned that lesson the hard way. She was disposable. The same people who had celebrated her now acted as if she did not exist. The stroke took her career. It took her health, and it took years of her life. But it could not take her will to survive. And when she finally emerged from that long recovery, when she was strong enough to look at the world again, she discovered that everything had changed. She had survived death, only to face a different kind of crisis. The financial fallout was waiting for her, and it would test her as surely as the hemorrhage had. The financial crisis that came afterwards. While Sharon was in this vulnerable state, unable to protect herself, the people she trusted stepped in and took what was hers. She has since revealed that she lost $18 million in savings during her illness. When she finally emerged from the fog of recovery, she looked at her bank account and discovered she had nothing. She has been careful not to name names. She has not filed lawsuits or written tell-all books exposing the individuals responsible. But she has spoken clearly about what happened. It was not just medical bills that drained her accounts. It was exploitation. People she had employed, people she had trusted with her finances, took advantage of her incapacity. They saw a woman who could not fight back, and they helped themselves. The money she had spent her entire life earning was gone. The betrayal did not stop with money. Hollywood, the industry that had celebrated her, turned its back. She has described this period as being abandoned. She was disposable. In an industry that worships youth and health, she was now damaged goods. The same people who had wanted to be her friend, who had wanted to produce her movies, who had wanted to be seen with her at parties, disappeared. She was alone in a big house with no money and no career, trying to raise a child while recovering from a brain injury. It would have broken most people. But Sharon Stone is not most people. She had survived a small town, survived the modeling grind, survived typecasting, survived 9 miscarriages, and survived a divorce and a custody battle. She was not going to let financial ruin be the thing that finished her. She had to rebuild. And rebuilding meant starting over from a position she had not occupied since she was a teenager. She took whatever work she could find. Small roles, independent films, projects that paid little but kept her working. She learned to live modestly, a skill she had not needed in decades. She stopped thinking about the glamour and started thinking about survival. Not just her own survival, but the survival of her sons. She had 2 young boys at home who depended on her. She could not afford to fall apart. While she was rebuilding her career, she was also quietly rebuilding something else, her sense of purpose. And that purpose had begun to take shape years before the stroke, in a way that would ultimately define her legacy as much as any movie she ever made. It started in 1995, while she was at the Cannes Film Festival, at the height of her fame. She was asked to do something unexpected. Elizabeth Taylor, the legendary actress who had become a pioneering activist for AIDS research, was unable to attend the annual fundraising gala. They needed someone to stand in and pick up the gavel and auction items in a room full of wealthy donors. They asked Sharon Stone. She said yes, and something clicked. She discovered she was good at it. She could work a room and charm people into opening their wallets. She could raise money for a cause that, at the time, was still deeply stigmatized. AIDS was a disease many people were afraid to even talk about. Sharon Stone stood on a stage in front of the world and asked for money to fight it. She raised a lot. She eventually took over Elizabeth Taylor's role as chairwoman of AMFAR. She became one of the most effective fundraisers in the charity world. But her activism came at a cost. She has stated plainly that her devotion to AIDS causes cost her work. She has claimed that she did not work for 8 years because of it. The film industry, she has suggested, did not appreciate her using her platform to talk about a disease that made people uncomfortable. There were threats, backlash, and doors that closed and never reopened. Her humanitarian work did not stop with AIDS. In 2004, when a massive tsunami devastated communities across the Indian Ocean, she co-wrote a charity single called "Come Together Now." The proceeds went to Habitat for Humanity and an organization called Angel's Place. When Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast the following year, she made the song available again to raise money for victims. At the World Economic Forum, an annual gathering of the global elite in Davos, Switzerland, she did something that became legendary in philanthropic circles. She was asked to speak about malaria, a disease that kills hundreds of thousands of people every year, most of them children. She listened to the presentation. Then she stood up, reached into her purse, pulled out her checkbook, and wrote a personal donation of $10,000. Then she turned to the room full of billionaires and world leaders and challenged them to match her. Within minutes, she had helped raise $1 million for malaria prevention. She has used her fame for smaller acts of kindness as well. She once convinced the CEO of Burlington Coat Factory to donate winter coats to children who could not afford them. She pointed out that kids miss school when they do not have warm clothes, and missing school leads to dropping out. The donation happened. She has donated over 70 handbags from her personal collection to charity auctions for Lupus LA, helping raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for research into a disease that disproportionately affects women. Her humanitarian work has been recognized around the world. In 2005, France named her an Officer of the Order of Arts and Letters. In 2021, they promoted her to Commander, one of the nation's highest cultural honors. The recognition was not just for her films. It was for what she did with the platform those films gave her. But here is the thing. Even as she was raising millions, even as she was winning awards for her activism, even as she was rebuilding her career from the ashes of financial ruin, she was keeping a secret. There was a part of her life she never discussed publicly. A part that had been running in the background for 32 years, hidden from the press, the industry, and everyone. Sharon Stone's double life. For 32 years, Sharon Stone lived two lives. There was the life everyone could see, the red carpets, the magazine covers, the movie premieres, the woman who stared down audiences from the screen with icy confidence. That Sharon Stone was untouchable. But then there was another life, the one she lived in the shadows. For decades, she kept these two lives separate. The public saw one face. The private world knew another. But recently, in her memoir, she decided to bring the two faces together. She decided to explain what it really meant to be Sharon Stone. And the picture she painted is not the one you saw on the screen. She called the book The Beauty of Living Twice. The title comes from a simple idea. When you nearly die, when you lose everything and have to start over, you get a second chance. You get to live a second life. But for Sharon, living twice was not just about surviving the brain hemorrhage. It was about the long, quiet war she had been fighting her entire career. The war between who she was expected to be and who she actually was. In the book, she dismantles the image Hollywood built around her. She writes about a life marked not by control, but by vulnerability. She describes the constant pressure to conform, to be agreeable, to play the game. She writes about directors and producers and executives who tested her boundaries, who pushed her to accept situations that made her uncomfortable. She learned early that saying no came with consequences. She has spoken about how women in Hollywood are trained to absorb mistreatment. If you complain, you are labeled a problem. If you assert yourself, you are labeled aggressive. If you refuse to go along, you are labeled troublesome. Sharon Stone refused to go along. And yes, she was labeled. She lost work because of it. Doors closed because she would not be what they wanted her to be. But she kept refusing. She kept saying no. And she kept the full truth of those battles to herself, because speaking out would only make things worse. The memoir goes deeper than Hollywood politics. She writes about childhood, about trauma, about experiences that shaped her long before she ever set foot on a movie set. She has revealed that she suffered maltreatment as a child, and it taught her early that the world was not a safe place. That lesson stayed with her, and it made her vigilant. She learned to present one face to the world while protecting another. That skill, born of necessity, became essential in Hollywood. The industry wanted a product. It wanted the ice queen, the femme fatale, the untouchable star. It did not want the woman who had been through trauma. It did not want the woman who had suffered miscarriages in private. It did not want the woman who was fighting for custody of her son or watching her savings disappear. So she gave them what they wanted. She played the part, and she kept the rest hidden. One of the most striking passages in the book is simple. She writes that the beauty of living twice is that you get to start over. Not everyone gets that chance. Most people live one life, make their mistakes, and carry them to the grave. Sharon Stone got a do-over. She got to rebuild from nothing. She got to raise her sons. She got to find purpose beyond fame. She got to become the person she wanted to be, not the person Hollywood tried to mold. For 32 years, she kept the two faces separate. One for the cameras, one for herself. Now, she has decided there is only one face left. The one that proves, beyond any doubt, that Sharon Stone was never just a movie star. She was always something more. What's your favorite memory of Sharon Stone? Drop your answers in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy this video, please click on the next one on your screen.